Hey folks, this is Caleb. Now, you will have heard that Trump is in North Korea. He visited North Korea, he crossed into the demilitarized zone, and he visited North Korea. He's the first president of the United States to ever visit North Korea. Historic moment. In a live broadcast I made a few weeks ago, I actually touched on why it was that Trump is moving ahead with North Korea, why I think Trump is pushing these negotiations. So this is what I said. As I've said before, and it must be said, it's only a matter of time. Eventually, North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons, and it's going to have the UN sanctions against it lifted, and it's going to join what's happening in that part of the world. What's happening in the far east of Russia, what's happening in the rural parts of China, what's happening in Central Asia is amazing, right? Asil Toji, I heard him say it. I was at the Valdi Discussion Club in Russia. I heard him say it. Asil Toji of the Norwegian Nobel Institute was talking about how in Eurasia, in the Eurasian subcontinent, it is a golden era, right? Railways are being built. Whole areas are being lit up with electricity. At this point, we have got, just a boom that is taking place. I mean, in the Russian Far East, you've got a farming boom. Russia has gone, in the 1990s when they had free market capitalism, Russia was dependent on the United States. It was importing all of its food from Eastern Europe and from the United States. Well, now Russia is having a farming boom. The Russian government has created an agricultural boom, right? I mean, they are just bringing technology to all kinds of different areas. They are bringing electricity. They're bringing highways and railways. I mean, it's you don't know what's happening in that part of the world, right? And U.S. media has made a point of making sure you don't know about it. But amazing, amazing things are happening in Eurasia right now. But there's a big black hole in the middle of it. There's a big block, right? The Eurasian Economic Union, the One Belt, One Road Initiative, the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. There's this big hole in it, and it's called North Korea, right? Russia and China, both members of the UN Security Council, they're not going to violate those sanctions. North Korea developed nuclear weapons. It violated, or it quit, it pulled out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. Because of that, you can't really trade with them the way you would trade with any other country. Well, at this point, South Korea really wants to trade with North Korea. China really wants to trade with North Korea. Russia really wants to trade with North Korea. Everyone wants to trade with North Korea. In order for North Korea to do that, they need to give up their nuclear weapons, right? Because Russia and China really want the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty to stay intact. It's very important that we don't have countries all over the world getting nukes, left and right. So, at some point, it's going to happen. Listen to Jim Rogers, the legendary investor, right? Very famous American investor. Used to be a pal of George Soros. Now he's a conservative libertarian. But, he was saying, look, it's going to happen. And what's going on here? The reason Trump had his meeting, his handshake with Kim, the reason he did it is because they want to make sure that American companies get a slice of the pie. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Not going to happen immediately. Give it 5 years, give it 10 years, probably sooner than that. North Korea is going to give up its nuclear weapons. Everyone in that part of the world knows that. Only a matter of time. And when that happens, there's going to be millions of people who are all literate, and a lot of them college educated. The North Korean population is very, very educated. Free university education. They have poured a lot of education into their population. They're going to be up for hire. A lot of them speak many different languages, Chinese, English, On top of that, those mountains, that's the mountainous part of the Korean peninsula, right? Korea's had issues with food because of, the fact that they're the mountainous part. The arable land is in the south. However, huge mountains. Those mountains in North Korea are full of coal. They are full of minerals. They are full of gold. They are full of all kinds of stuff. Right? Only a matter of time before North Korea, they give up their nukes and they join the world economy. And Trump, being a businessman, being a self-centered businessman like he is, he knows, and he is trying to make sure that when North Korea is open for business, when they have their Deng Xiaoping moment, right? When that happens, right? He wants to make sure that American companies, and probably his own American companies, he wants to make sure that but they get a slice of it. And that's what this is about. Only a matter of time. Only a matter of time, right? That this huge block, this barrier in the middle of the booming Silk Road, Eurasian Economic Union explosion. This block, right? I mean, it's crazy. There's the Trans-Asian Railway System that the UN set up, right? It starts in South Korea, goes through North Korea, goes into China, goes into Russia, takes it all the way to Poland and Europe and Western Europe, right? It's ready to get going. They're going to have a train connecting. It's happening. It's happening. It's only a matter of time. That's what's going on here. That's what's going on here, folks. If you want to know what's going on there. And furthermore, I believe there are entities inside of the U.S. government apparatus, within the Trump administration, and within the intel agencies, among people who don't like Trump and others, who really, really don't want that Deng Xiaoping moment to happen in North Korea. They really don't want that to happen, because they know the prediction was 78, 79, when China opened up, had its reform and opening up. What was supposed to happen in China was what happened in a lot of Eastern European countries. A lot of these Eastern European countries, they'd have a leader who'd say, hey, we're going to have market socialism now, we're going to have some privatizations. They would, take out a loan from Bank of America or whatever. They'd have some problems. Pretty soon you'd have a color revolution and capitalism would be restored. That happened all over the Eastern Bloc. Czechoslovakia, East Germany, all these places. Right? That was supposed to happen in China, according to American intelligence. And it didn't. In fact, it did the opposite. The Chinese Communist Party got stronger. Foreign investment, they brought in the foreign investment. They utilized it to strengthen their socialist planned economy. And now the Chinese Communist Party is stronger than it was in the 1970s and 60s. And then Vietnam did the same thing, right? Vietnam, again, USA predicted, okay, well, Vietnam will open up and, we'll bring some investment and then we'll be maneuvering in there. And pretty soon the Vietnamese will overthrow the Communist Party. It'll be like the Vietnam War never happened. No. In fact, at this point, the Vietnamese Communist Party is stronger. Why? They've utilized foreign investment, and now, we've got like the World Economic Forum talking about how there's a boom in Vietnam. So North Korea is getting ready to do what China and Vietnam have done. And the CIA is freaked out. Why? Because the Korean Workers' Party, the Vietnamese Communist Party, at one point, there's history there, and they align with the USA against China in different instances. They've got their foot in there. CIA's got their foot in Vietnam. There's entities in China that are sympathetic to the West and all of that. But North Korea is locked and loaded. Those folks are still technically at war with the United States. There was an armistice, but there was never a treaty to end the Korean War. Yeah, North Korea, you give North Korea a Deng Xiaoping moment, and that'll be an ideological boost to anti-imperialism and socialism and Marxism like you've never seen. They are very terrified of the ideological implications of making the Korean Workers' Party powerful and effective. They were afraid of seeing the Korean Workers' Party strengthen, because the Korean Workers' Party is one of the most revolutionary, anti-imperialist, and hardline communist parties in the world. That's a fact, right? The Black Panthers. No one ever talks about this, but the Black Panthers of the United States had a very close relationship with North Korea. They were friendly to all socialist countries. Huey Newton visited China many times. Huey Newton went to Cuba. They were close to Cuba. But something about Juche and North Korea, you can look at this up. There's a lot written about it. The Black Panthers and North Korea, they were like this. They had a really good relationship, right? And North Korea, they were very tight with Gaddafi. They were tight with the Palestinians, and there's something there, right? There may be a faction. Vietnam. They don't like any socialism anywhere. But the North Koreans, the only country in the world that has ever taken a U.S. Army general prisoner. Think about that, right? The North Koreans took a U.S. Army general, not a private, not a sergeant, not some low-level officer. No. A U.S. Army general, they took him prisoner. They are the only country in the world that has ever captured a U.S. Army general. And CIA and the intelligence agencies are terrified of what will happen if they are able to pull off in North Korea what has been pulled off in Vietnam, what has been pulled off in China. They are scared of giving them their Deng Xiaoping moment in North Korea, right? They want to overthrow the North Korean government, and that's it. They do not want the Korean Workers' Party that is so strongly anti-imperialist, has a whole history of anti-imperialism. They don't want them to be powerful. They're afraid that it'll ultimately lead toward the reunification of the Korean Peninsula, right? That if, especially as South Korea moves out of U.S., hands. I mean, we saw the daughter of the dictator Park Chung-hee. We saw her thrown out of office. We now have Moon Jae-in in South Korea, much more sympathetic to China, much more open to negotiating. There's a very good chance, and we saw it. Everyone saw it. They try to tell you that everyone in South Korea hates the North. They want to kill all the North. We saw at the Olympics what happened. When the Olympic Games happened and the North Koreans came into a stadium in South Korea, there was massive applause. The Koreans cheered like crazy for their northern country folk. Right? And that bringing North Korea into the world economy could set the stage for some level of a unified government on the Korean Peninsula. Right? And think about it. There's a lot that the military-industrial complex would lose in such a situation. You know how much money we make, not we, but military corporations make selling weapons to South Korea? Do you know how much money is made by military corporations in the USA because we have thousands of troops stationed in South Korea? A lot to be lost. Not just in terms of ideology, with the Korean Workers' Party becoming stronger than ever, with its radical, revolutionary, anti-imperialist history, but on top of that, right? In addition to all of that, what happens? The huge money-making opportunity called the never-ending Korean War, in which more money is thrown down the drain, more weapons are sold to South Korea, more American GIs get stationed in South Korea, a huge military base gets set up there. All of that goes away. The U.S. troops in South Korea, if there's peace with the North, they're out of there. The huge stockpiles of weapons and, the terminal high-altitude defense system and all the huge, bunch of military equipment that we've been selling to South Korea, they ain't buying it no more. Think about it. There's a lot to lose if you got peace on the Korean Peninsula. There's a lot to gain for guys like Jim Rogers and maybe for Trump and for some people that would get in there and invest and get some of those minerals and get some of those deals and, hire some of those folks. And there's a lot to gain, sure. But there's also a lot to lose. A lot to lose for the military-industrial complex. Must be said. Must be said. I'm just telling you, just like war in the Middle East and the fact that every single, Middle Eastern oil autocracy, Kuwait, Oman, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, all of them are stockpiling weapons. That's a big moneymaker for the military-industrial complex. South Korea, being locked and loaded to fight the North. If the Koreans are able to join hands and reunify peacefully, maybe do it in a federated way, let the North be the Korean Workers' Party and they came their legal system at the South, do their legal system, some kind of federated alliance where they're not, lot to lose for a lot of very rich and powerful people in the United States. It must be said. I wanted to mention that, and that's what you need to know about the Korean Peninsula.
Now, if you like what I had to say about North Korea, you'll really like what I've written in this new book that I wrote, City Builders and Vandals. There are 3 different chapters related to North Korea and the Korean conflict. And so you really ought to get a copy of it, and you can order it. The link is down below the video, so you really ought to order your copy. It's a wide-ranging book, but there's quite a bit about North Korea and Trump and the negotiations and what's really going on. So you should check it out. Thanks.